back with global geostrategic views. I continue my discourse on China because of the way the world is changing and reacting to what it's done and doing, and what a role that India played in staring down the barrel against what was assumed nobody could actually do. And while we make a policy on China, right, we have to be clear-eyed, national interest forefront, not bully-headed, no romantic views about China, no romantic views about civilizational links, nothing of that sort. Because you've got to be pure and simple. China is revengist. China is hostile to India. China has imperialistic genetics. China has absolutely opposed or is opposing India at every front because it does not want India to be a competitor. In fact, in India, like I said, they want us to counter. When you put this in focus and don't let it get scrambled by this, this crowd either on Wall Street or on Mass Avenue or the Lutyens, Han lovers, as they say, you absolutely got to watch history to see this, right? And they're also out there, folks, just remember, to cartographically change India's map. And in this, their biggest tools were and are Pakistan and Nepal. Not Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is not, in my opinion, not going to play ball, and neither Myanmar. The two people who are going to play ball are Nepal, because Nepal's desire, as this guy writes, rightly puts it, though he's putting a perspective that comes out of Nepal, Kathmandu, is the story of Kathmandu's long quest for deeper engagement with Beijing. Actually goes back to 75, when Deng Xiaoping met with Gerald Ford, and that's the time, if you remember, India had just taken over Sikkim, and Ford was discussing with Deng Xiaoping whether India was out there to take over Nepal. However, in my opinion, it goes further back to the Qing dynasty, I believe it is, when the Gorkha kings had offered their help to Imperial China to take on the imperialist forces in India at that point in time. So this really goes back, folks. And what they really want to do by Nepal is, first Pakistan, they wanted to actually take over, use Pakistan to kind of ride piggyback on the Kashmir issue, while the laser focus is on Ladakh and the Indus Valley river water system, folks. Absolutely true. The second is Nepal. It kind of starts on the side. That's where it starts. Lumbini is what they maybe think maybe after, but this latest issue with the map issue is Lipule, had to do with them. And if you take Nepal forward and you come up with Gorkhaland and the Chicken Neck, and it comes up to Bhutan, Sikkim, and that's exactly what they're after, folks. Don't ever let this power gap build any further than what it has already. And you need all the legs you can get. You especially need the Quad at this point in time. And let's see what we read, right? It says, overall, the pattern shows the PLA's desperate design to snatch the lake at Lukung through a three-pronged strategy of attacking from Sirichap in the north, Chuchul in the south, and through the lake water from middle. This is the key choke point from where the Chinese can cut off Indian access to the entire flank of Chipchak Plains. Aksai Chen in the east, Shyok Valley to the north, which means the India control is pushed to the west of Shyok River and south of the Indus River, forcing India to accept both rivers as natural boundaries. And once China gets control of the southern side of the Karakoram, it can easily approach Siachen Glacier from the Despang corridor and meet at Tashkugan Junction, from where the CPEC crosses into Gilgit-Baltistan. That's why Gilgit-Baltistan, very critical, folks. That would be disastrous for Indian defense, leaving the strategic Nubra vulnerable, possibly impacting even India's hold over Siachen. Chinese access to Changla Pass through Lukung and Tangse would threaten the entire Indus Valley, and this is their objective. It is quite possible that China is eyeing the waters of the Shyok, Galwan and Chemo rivers to divert them to the arid Aksai Chin and its Ali region. More importantly, I think there is a plan that these waters are needed for agriculture in Pakistan, which is part of the CPEC, and also for massive chip manufacturing foundries that they plan to set up there, folks. More after the break. Talk about welcome back. A lot of talk about who actually won this eyeball confrontation. Well, it all depends. It depends on whether India still holds the Kailash Hills, where there's a little bit of a doubt about. And if it does, then I think India came out ahead. If it doesn't, it doesn't understand first why Kailash Hills was so critical for India, because they have a history going back to 62. This is the place where the fiercest Chinese battles were fought with India in 1962. So there has to be a reason. So there also has to, as a result of it, there also has to be a reason why it's important to them, and hence why it was important for us to hold on to them. And this is like what Major General G.G. Dwivedi writes, why Kailash Range matters. The Kailash Range was a theatre of conflict during 62 Chinese offensive, with key battles at Rezang La and Gurung Hill. What does he say, right? The course of history was set to reverse 58 years later, when on August 30th, 2020, the special STF troops secured Kailash Ridges as a preemptive operation, taking the PLA by surprise. This action proved a game changer, neutralizing gains made by the Chinese along the northern bank of Pangong Tso, and rendered PLA positions east of Spangor Gap, Maldo Garrison, totally vulnerable. Why the PLA did not go for Kailash Ridge initially as part of its aggression in May 2020 could be because of two plausible reasons. First, paucity of infantry, as 4 infantry divisions now motorized, not suited to hold ground. And second, a presumption that Indian Army will not venture to undertake proactive counteraction. In 62, this is what something about history that we need to know and read and observe and absorb. In 62, it was on the Kailash Range that Indian soldiers proved their mettle and made the PLA pay a heavy price despite being poorly equipped and ill-prepared. Today, given a rich experience in high-altitude glacial warfare, coupled with vastly improved equipment and infrastructure, the Indian Army is well positioned to hold the Kailash Range for good. For good. And hence, if we've given it away, this is something that the MEA has given us a smack on our face again, folks. Blame it on them. The Chinese, on the other hand, are beginning to realize the harsh realities of winters at their line of actual control. The Kailash Ridge makes a tourist with its history a turning point, as it is the first piece of territory that has been recovered from Chinese illegal occupation, but definitely not the last one, as India's claim line is the Johnson Line of 1865. Therefore, it is time to convey a stern message to the Chinese leadership that India will not compromise on its sovereignty. So this is coming off before this deal was done. But here, see, let's see what Harsh. So there's both sides of the view. See, if it depends on which way you look at it. See what Harsh Pant writes. New Delhi's new regional calculus. India is giving peace a chance from a position of strength after showing it can adequately defend its interests when challenged. That is true. What has been striking in the analysis of these developments in India is a strange sense of defeatism. Yes, to me also. If we move from Kailash Ranges, I actually feel a little bit of defeatism. The single most important geopolitical development of the last few months has been India standing up to China after the Galwan Valley incident in June 2020 and making it clear to Beijing and to the world that it is possible to resist Chinese aggression successfully. And this was the most important achievement, right? Which is still true, right? Even if you've given back Kailash, right? Even as India forces challenge their considerably more resource-rich country counterpart, Chinese counterparts from along LAC. As a consequence, for New Delhi, today making a play for diplomatic overtures vis-a-vis China and Pakistan is not as costly as it once would have been, and that's the real change in the regional matrix and India's security calculus. However, I must warn Harsh Pant, if Kailash Ridge has been given, they will be held to pay sooner than later, folks. More after the break. Welcome back, folks. Let's see what Kaval Simple writes. China's military climb down in Ladakh leads to LOC ceasefire. So somewhat of a positive fallout, though I think it's a coordinated effort by the two, is the way I look at it, right? And what does he say? He says, Wang Yi servingly indicates that for China, a solution is not a priority. It is linked to other elements in the overall relationship, which means it is a lever for Indian concessions in other areas, especially the access to the Indian economy. This is contrary to External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's repeated affirmations that the rest of the relationship is dependent on maintaining peace and tranquility on the border, right? There are huge gaps still. China should have hopefully learned durable lessons from its failed attempt to unilaterally impose its version of the LAC. Its belief that forcing a winter deployments on us on icy heights, imposing a massive supplies burden and economic cost might make India more amenable proved wrong. China's decision to withdraw in midwinter has exposed its confused Ladakh strategy. That's absolutely true. its bid to intimidate India and get its way without fight having failed. Okay, he says videos of retreat of Chinese soldiers, tanks, destructions of fortification, etc. have dented the PLA's invincible image. Ladakh has been a major strategic defeat for China. For the first time, China has withdrawn from it's called its own sovereign territory under external military pressure, in striking contrast with its conduct in the South China Sea. Folks, like I said here, for China, a no-win, no-lose situation is like a huge loss of face, and that's exactly what's happened. But having gotten the Kailash Hills, I am disturbed that we gave it back after having held on to them through the worst of winter. So here's, because of that, what Praveen Swami writes, how India played into China's hands on the border dispute. So you look at it from a different perspective. What does he write? And I think he's actually viewing, he thinks that we have given up Kailash Hills, and he may be right. He says, losing little time, China, while putting the blame for Ladakh on India, said it would defend its sovereignty at all costs. To recall, China President Xi Jinping, since assuming office power in November 2012, has repeatedly said that not an inch of its territory would be given up. To take the Chinese argument further, nothing stops China from voicing the idea of reunification of the state of Arunachal Pradesh, which it calls South Tibet with the mainland. Like, this is what I've been saying, right? With the possibility of a two-front war staring it in the face, the Modi government clearly panicked. I don't know. The military thinking conveyed to the government was that while the army would fight a two-front war, China should not be the primary front, because then Pakistan would be certain to open the second front. In Indian thinking, the opposite wouldn't happen. And that's exactly, it's kind of strange, right? Consequently, such was the haste to de-escalate that the Modi government also gave up the only tactical bargaining chip it had in Ladakh, the Kailash Range in South Pangong, which overlooks PLA's Moldo garrison and was captured by the Indian Army in a daring night operation. The September 10th Moscow agreement, like I said, Moscow rears its dirty head again, between Foreign Minister Jaishankar and Chinese State Councillor Wang Yi, had been held up for 5 months because of this niggling point. The PLA was insistent that the Indian Army vacate the heights on the Kailash. And so I am really, really shattered when I read this, and I can see that Jaishankar and maybe the politicians of the senior most guy who actually held the army's hand and let it go finally gave in, and that's kind of a shame. For the present, China has more than achieved its objective in Ladakh. Not only does it now occupy territory up to its 1959 claim line without fighting, but it also got the Indian government to admit that India has repeatedly violated Chinese sovereignty by clinging to the 1993 line, which did not exist in the Chinese narrative. And that, folks, is the stupidity. If it's happening in this Praveen Sani, having got its way in Ladakh by forcing India to accept the 1959 LAC, something that China had not managed to do in 60 years. Beijing will not ease its pressure on India. That's absolutely. Past masters of conflict and cooperation, China will continue with its military coercion all along with what is now a reinforced one front from west to east. Even as it pressures India to normalize ties, India has only itself to blame for its increasing limited options. And I think this is a side that we also have to take note of and wonder. But while we do that, see what's happening on the other side. Gilgit-Baltistan Assembly adopts resolution seeking provincial status. Okay. Now look, Gilgit-Baltistan, and if you read what I have to say here, is what is important that you should note, and this is what we should be countering our forces with, right? Pakistan to merge Gilgit-Baltistan with the mainland. Okay, Gilgit-Baltistan is probably the most crucial strategic location of Asia, as it is the center where 3 nuclear powers, India, Pakistan and China, converge. GB is probably the most crucial strategic location of Asia, as is the center where all these guys merge, right? It says even the Middle East countries and Russia are within a short range of GB. This region fits into China's expansionism plan, and control over the region could give it a massive strategic advantage to enhance its geopolitical control in Asia. Folks, Gilgit-Baltistan is what India should be after, folks, to counter China here. Jai Hind.